Hello and welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. Do you believe in miracles? It would seem Democrats do after the Joe Biden surge on Super Tuesday. For them, the fear of the Bernie Sanders candidacy may now be contained. However, this is far from over. Taking on Trump will be no easy task. Cross-talking the war on Bernie, I'm joined by my guest, Rania Khalid in Beirut. She is a producer and host at In the Now. In New York, we have Lionel. He is a legal and media analyst. Also in New York, we have Danny Haifong. He is a contributing editor at Black Agenda Report and co-author of American Exceptionalism and American Innocence, a people's history of fake news from the Revolutionary War to the War on Terror. All right, crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want, and I always appreciate it. Let's go to Beirut first. Rania, I feel like after Super Tuesday, looking at the corporate media, that there's a whole lot of gaslighting going on. It's already a foregone conclusion. Bernie's out here, and James Carville says he should step down and leave the campaign. But for a very long time, Joe Biden had that position, but no one said that he should step down. I really think this gaslighting really shows a lot of collusion between the DNC and the media to frame the narrative, because Joe Biden hasn't changed, okay? He's the same guy, but the perception of him is being radically altered, and it's being done intentionally, and it's being done at Bernie's expense. Go ahead in Beirut.
100%. And that narrative started after South Carolina, where you had the entire establishment, as well as the mainstream media, really change the whole game in favor of Joe Biden. They gave him over $70 million of basically free positive publicity, framing him as the best candidate. And that really is the reason I think he did so well, because if you look at the polls between a week ago and then Super Tuesday, they were drastically different. Joe Biden got a huge bump from the media portraying him as the winner of the whole primary after South Carolina. A lot of people didn't even choose who they were going to vote for until 2 or 3 days before Super Tuesday. So that helped Joe Biden immensely. Plus, you had the entire Democratic establishment openly in our faces, coordinating with other candidates to drop out to benefit Joe Biden, which did happen, right? Pete Buttigieg dropping out was done in coordination with the Democratic Party to help Joe Biden. Same with Amy Klobuchar. And you also have Elizabeth Warren staying in the race in order to try to obstruct Sanders. Exactly, and that's exactly what she did. Joe Biden wasn't supposed to win any northern states. The only reason he did is because Elizabeth Warren took a chunk of support away from Bernie Sanders' progressive base, that a lot of Warren supporters would have gone to Sanders. He probably would have won Massachusetts and Minnesota had she not stayed in the race.
Let's go to Lionel right now. Lionel, you must be eating a whole lot of popcorn these days watching this, because, over the last few days, the number of gaffes that Biden has committed, it's embarrassing to watch, but you'd never see those gaffes on CNN and MSNBC. You see a lot of it on Fox and the internet. But, this is like Pete Buttigieg was a manufactured candidate. Joe Biden is now an avatar for the DNC. Go ahead, Lionel.
My dear friend Peter, nobody cares about the gaffes. Nobody cares about the malaprops. Nobody cares about this. You are my friend, as am I, proud to say we are denizens of the bubble. We are in the salon. We talk to our friends. We said, can you believe how he confused his wife with his sister? Do you know what the DNC is saying? It doesn't matter. He is the candidate. He is going to be the candidate in July, and that's it. And you know what? As long as you keep mentioning him, doesn't matter. Promise.
Okay, Lionel, I'm going to date myself. It reminds me of being there with Peter Sellers. We have Chauncey Gardner running for the Democrats right now, okay? Look it up, everybody. It's a good comparison.
I like to watch.
I like to watch it. Danny, Danny, let me go to you in New York. I'll give my thesis. We're up in front here. Is that the DNC knows this presidential race is lost, and that's why they want Biden, because if Bernie were to get the nomination, he could change the way the Democratic Party is governed. The DNC, the Clintonites, and Obamaites, they want to keep everything the way it is. They would rather lose to Donald Donald Trump with Biden than take a chance on Bernie Sanders. That's my theory. Go ahead, Danny.
We have to remember, too, in exactly what you're saying, in September 2019, huge corporate Democratic Party donors threatened the DNC with a withdrawal of huge donations to its institution just because Elizabeth Warren was being considered as the primary pick. Elizabeth Warren has fallen far from grace ever since, but Bernie Sanders represents a far more existential threat to the DNC and the Wall Street interests, the military-industrial complex, and the rest of them, the blob, so to speak. And so this was always a foregone conclusion, the attempt to rig the election against Bernie Sanders. We saw it in 2016, and we saw it at the very beginning of the 2020 campaign, where it seemed like the DNC was trying to find anyone they could find to take away votes, to split the electorate. It didn't end up working. And so at the very last minute after Nevada, the DNC decided it's time to get behind Biden, the person who can be most relied upon with his decades of experience shilling for Wall Street, shilling for the mass incarceration regime, shilling for the intelligence apparatus. He will carry forward the agenda of the ruling elite, and he can be most trusted to do that regardless of the gaffes, regardless of the embarrassments that he may cause the party. What really matters is not beating Trump, it's ensuring that the rich stay rich and the rest of us suffer.
You know, let's go back to Beirut. Rand, I think it's really interesting. It's very interesting is that when you consider the money that Mike Bloomberg pumped into it, $500 million to all these consultants and media and all that. I mean, he gave a lot of money to some very, very bad people that will keep this business model going. And that's exactly what this is about. They want to keep the status quo going. It's not about democracy, not about what people want. It's what they want, their interests, their careers, and even being in opposition is a good gig for them. They're doing great under Trump. Go ahead in Beirut.
Yeah, as an opposition, the DNC has brought in tons of money. And what Danny was saying was 100% right, by the way, about the DNC and the Democratic establishment has more to lose from under Bernie Sanders than they do from letting Trump win a second term. And, you know, let's not get this wrong. I'm sure they have no illusions that Joe Biden is a terrible candidate to go up against Trump and probably won't win. They don't care. At the end of the day, Trump is more Trump serves the class interests of the Democratic establishment way more than Bernie Sanders ever could. Bernie Sanders actually challenges it, and that's why they're fine with another Trump presidency. And like you said, they've had a great 3 years being in the opposition. It's so easy to be in the opposition. You can reel in money, you know, support us every time Trump does something bad without actually doing anything to challenge any of the policies that Trump is pushing or putting into place. They don't actually do anything. It's all just symbolic Nancy Pelosi hand clapping, you know, to make everybody think we're the big opposition, while actually approving almost all of Trump's legislative agenda. At the end of the day, they are more threatened by Bernie Sanders than they are by Donald Trump. So they're happy. They're perfectly fine with another Trump presidency. But you know what? That's going to be a disaster, not just for Americans, but for the rest of the world. But they're just kind of willing to sacrifice everybody so that they can keep living large while life sucks for everybody else.
Okay, let me go back to Lionel in New York. I mean, you know, ever since the very beginning, I mean, it was Hillary Clinton that said that Trump didn't have the temperament to be president. He wasn't presidential and all that. But I mean, the last few days on the stump, I mean, Trump really looks super presidential against Joe Biden. I mean, just the optics of it all. Go ahead, Lionel.
Let me tell you what's happening right now. Let me do this right now. Hello, Bernie. Yeah, listen. I love the whole Democratic Socialist commie thing you did. Loved it. Do me a favor. You're going to be out. We'll give you a 7-figure book deal like the last ambassador to Ukraine, your 4th or 5th lake house, a job for your wife and your family, and that's it. Thanks a million. Now Amscray. And that is it. Let me tell you something. Donald Trump is the greatest president of my lifetime. And if anybody thinks that any of these Democratic clowns, any of them, could have done 10% of what he's done for this country and the world, it's a delusion. Let me try to make it even simpler. The Democratic Party, this iteration, is dead. moribund, through, pipe dream. Forget it. It's over. You had nothing. You never, ever even came close to identifying and connecting with Mr. and Mrs. American. You want to do this Greta Thunberg climate change crap? What was your message? What was Bernie's message? What was all of their message? I'll tell you what it was. I'm not Trump. And as we say in the South, that dog don't hunt. So guess what? It was your chance, and you blew it.
Okay. Everyone's getting a bit of steam under the ears here, okay? Our other two guests are not big fans of Donald Trump, so let's stay focused on the Democratic Party here. Danny.
I would have never guessed.
It's all right. 1 minute, Danny, before we go to the break here. This is what they're doing with Joe and Bernie is dividing the party irreparably. Go ahead, Danny. 1 minute before we go to the break.
Yes, that's what exactly is happening. And we have to look at this as who is benefiting and who won't benefit from the destruction of the Democratic Party. I see the moribund Democratic Party as being in need of replacement. So what really needs to happen is that Bernie Sanders and this conflict between the establishment will hopefully drive enough energy of ordinary people to begin to think about other alternatives. Because yes, the Democratic Party establishment will do anything to destroy Bernie Sanders, and that will alienate a lot of the base that the Democratic Party needs to win.
Okay, we're going to go to a short break, and after that short break, we'll continue our discussion on the war on Bernie. Stay with RT. Welcome back to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter LaBelle. To remind you, we're discussing the war on Bernie. Okay, let's go back to Beirut. What I think is very interesting here is some of the things that Danny was saying, because you know, we all know that the primaries is the silly season. That's what we call it for a good reason. But, you know, traditionally, the party comes together, okay, and you start papering over the differences. I don't think that's going to happen this time. I cannot see, and I know a lot of Bernie bros, and they're excellent people, really nice people, and really well-educated people. I have differences with them over policy, as I'm a conservative, but I have a lot of respect for them, okay? For a lot of them that I've met. They're not going to vote for Joe Biden. No way. They're going to stay home. What do you think? Go ahead in Beirut.
I mean, I think it's a mixed bag. I think some will and a lot won't. There's no telling like what the breakdown will be, but I don't think that Joe Biden will have the sort of enthusiasm that he needs, even without the Bernie bros or the Bernie supporters. But even, you know, there might be, like, let's say there's going to be a significant number of people that after this entire nominating process is finished and it's completely clear that it's been stacked against Bernie Sanders and they end up giving it to Joe Biden, there's going to be a lot of people who are irreparably alienated from the Democratic Party and will never want to do anything as a Democrat ever again. The Democratic Party is going to lose a big chunk of support. And that's going to make it very, very difficult for them to win an election against somebody who has a huge support base, Donald Trump, that's very committed and that will come out and vote for him. So I think this is definitely going to hurt them in the election, and long term it's going to hurt them as a party. But I don't think they care. I think they're willing to blow up their party if it means keeping things the way that they are, where you have a bunch of elites controlling everything and making a ton of money off of it.
Yep, because they have no moral compass, okay? It's been demonstrated over and over again here. Let's go to Lionel. You know, I know how you feel about Donald Trump, but the interesting thing for me, in looking at this rivalry inside of the Democratic Party, it took Trump to basically destroy the legacy of Obama, took down Hillary Clinton, and because the Democrats can't get themselves in order and actually present a platform to run on, because they're just demonizing one candidate and propping up another that has nothing to do with policy. Right. Trump indirectly, and now he can chalk up destroying the Democratic Party, and it's their own damn fault. Go ahead, Lionel.
Well, you know, Peter, let's go back to when I was a kid. And by the way, I am not a conservative or a liberal or a Republican or even a Democrat. I don't even know what those terms mean. But there was a time, Peter, and you may remember this, when the Democrats stood for something. Anti-war, human rights, gay rights, civil rights, you name it, they were in the street. They stood for something. I could check off what their platforms were. Now, it's this breathtakingly incoherent blather. I don't know what they're talking about. Say what you want about Donald Trump. You like him, don't like him, it doesn't matter. Nobody has ever scratched their head and said, what is this guy about? What programs does he want? What exactly is he offering me and promising me? For some particular reason, I haven't left the Democrats. They've left me.
Yep.
This isn't progressive thinking. This isn't liberal. And the sad part is that young people today believe this crap stands for something. It's psychobabble. That's the problem.
You know, let's go to Danny here. I mean, I actually was quite liberal a good part of my life, but I agree with Lionel on that point, is that they left me, okay? They don't talk to me. They're not interested in my problems. As a matter of fact, I am the problem, according to a lot of people in the Democratic Party. That is such, you know, they talk about diversity and inclusion, but what they do is they push people out. They've pushed a lot of people out here. You know, Danny, explain to me why the Democrats think Hillary 2.0 is going to win this time around. And Joe is even weaker than Hillary Clinton because Joe can't even string a few sentences together. I mean, what are they smoking? What are they thinking about here? I mean, this, you know, Joe, he says he's a senior citizen. You know, this is cruelty. This is, and I say this with a straight face. By all accounts, he's a nice guy, okay? But if he can't figure out who his wife is and his sister is, does he belong in the Oval Office? Go ahead, Danny.
Well, what you're saying is exactly right, and there's a huge political problem presented by Joe Biden's incompetence and his shady policy record.
Yep.
We have to understand right now that the Democratic Party is in full overdrive, in hiding, in concealing the past 40 years of neoliberal degradation, endless war, and the assault on working people that it has been totally complicit in. And this need to hide that policy agenda, which has ultimately been a highlight of Joe Biden's entire campaign. No one seems to want to really go at him for what he has actually done in his long, illustrious career serving the establishment, when what is really going to be a problem for him against Donald Trump is that you don't have to, as Lionel said, you don't have to look very far to know what Trump stands for and also what he's done. He can go to the left against Joe Biden on issues of war and peace. He can say that he signed a peace deal with the Taliban. He can say that he's always been for removing troops from Syria, regardless of whether it happens or not. And then he can move to his right and actually appeal to his base, who he needs to appeal to on issues of immigration and the economy, while Joe Biden will have to spend overtime hiding his policy agenda from the Democratic Party base, which sees Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, all these things as beneficial policies in the vast majority. We're talking about 80% want a Green New Deal, 58% want Medicare for all. That's what he's going to have to hide from, and that is not going to be a good look. So the Democratic Party establishment doesn't care.
Danny, but you said, I think twice or three times, he's going to have to go into overdrive. His time is up, okay? He can't go into overdrive, okay? His time is up already. Okay, let's go back to Beirut here.
And
okay,
that's
a little
the
bit,
problem. He's incompetent, right?
Okay, you know, but one of the things, you know, when in watching this whole saga, this spectacle play out, you know, when you look at the entire, what I think it was 24 candidates at one point, you know, and again, you know, that the identitarian politics, the diversity and all of this, they end up with a 70-year-old white man. What happened here, okay? What happened here? I mean, the only thing that Joe Biden has ever excelled at is being mediocre. Go ahead in Beirut.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily about whether they ended up with a white 78-year-old man. I mean, that would have also been Bernie Sanders,
Sure.
had it been
Good
Bernie
point.
Sanders.
Fair.
It's not so much about that. It's so much it's more about the policies that Joe Biden represents. You do have this new sort of woke identity politics that the Democratic, you know, neoliberal establishment has embraced in a very superficial way. And so it's not about the fact that Joe Biden's an old white man. It's about the policies he's supported throughout his career, whether it's the crime bill and pushing that, whether it's literally whipping Democratic votes for the war in Iraq, the most destructive foreign policy decision of the 21st century,
Yep.
Or whether it's opposing busing and basically befriending segregationists back in the day, and also it's just that's what's so shocking about this is Joe Biden's entire record is the opposite of all of these superficial woke identity politics slogans that the Democrats have been throwing around for the past 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. Lionel, you wanted to jump in there. Go ahead.
Peter, there's something I've got to say. 2 things. First, to you, my good friend, and my new friends here. There is something about Bernie Sanders that I like. He's a rebel. He has been Bernie Sanders for 30-plus years. What you see is what you get. This is what he says. He's authentic. He believes in whether he's right or wrong, and there's something to be said for that.
Agreed.
And number 2, I feel so sorry for, yet again, young people who put their money and their time and their effort and their belief in somebody only to have it pulled away. And let me tell you, do you know who's going to be the person responsible for the ultimate double cross? Bernie. Because he never had it in his mind at all to take this all the way. And that's the sad part, because I'm telling you, in as much as he may be antithetical to me politically or ideologically, there's something about him that I like. Damn it, he stands for something, and that's refreshing.
Danny, one of the things, I guess ever since Super Tuesday, actually, even before it, I mean, in my small circle that I talk on a very regular basis about politics, there's one theme, and most of my friends are conservative, but most people, almost all conservatives I know, watch Bernie very closely. It's very interesting. Why doesn't he fight back? Why doesn't he take a punch? It's politics, after all.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that in electoral politics, especially the Democratic Party at this time, so-called bourgeois civility, this idea that you cannot challenge the establishment. You can't challenge the way things work in the DNC, but you can challenge the policies. All of that has to do with why Bernie Sanders doesn't challenge the Democratic Party establishment head on. He does so in the way he organizes his campaign. He does so in the way that he stands for things like Medicare for All and a Green New Deal. But he does not go up against the DNC establishment, and I'm guessing some of that has to do with fear. Some of that has to do also with the fact that he wants to run within the Democratic Party establishment. He wants to win an election within the Democratic Party. And in order to do so, you have to kiss the ring of the DNC and how the DNC does things. Now, I think that's a monumental mistake on Bernie Sanders' part, especially after he was attacked with the Russiagate farce when they tried to say, the Washington Post and the FBI, CIA, they tried to say that Russia was trying to help him. When he went along with that, I think that was one of the first steps of Bernie Sanders looking weak in front of the Democratic Party establishment.
It's very interesting. Let's go back to Beirut. I saw that with Bloomberg. What a fumble. What an unforced error that Bernie committed right there. I was astounded by. Here's a policy wonk guy that can tell you all kinds of things about everything. I mean, he's been in politics for so long, and then he fumbles a fundamental thing that will stick to him. Let's go back to Beirut. Last 40 seconds here. Is Bernie going to keep fighting, or is he going to let the media destroy him? Go ahead, in Beirut.
I think Bernie and the movement he built are going to keep fighting. I just don't know if they can win. I'm a generally cynical person, so I've kind of been cynical about the process from the beginning. I didn't think they were going to let Bernie win regardless, and I still think that's the case. The question is, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? Do we do what happened in 2016 where everybody just gets behind the nominee? Because that's what happened, and I think that was a mistake, and Trump still won. Or do we do something different? People need to start having that conversation, and unfortunately, I don't see that happening among the movement around Bernie Sanders yet. I don't see that conversation taking place.
The problem is that the Democrats have to start reimagining politics, but they seem completely incapable of doing it. That's all the time we have. Many thanks to my guests in New York and in Beirut. And thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time, and remember, crosstalk rules.